Hello and welcome to ConTinual, the convention that never ends. My name is Jean Marie Ward, and tonight we've got a very special edition of ConTinual, featuring a new anthology called A Woman Unbecoming, being published by Crone Girls Press. With me today is the publisher and one of the editors, Rachel Brune, the other editor, Carol Gyzander, and four of the wonderful authors who will be participating in this very important anthology. So I'm going to start off by asking everyone to introduce themselves, starting with Rachel.
Hi, I'm Rachel Brune. I'm the founder and now chief editor. I used to be the only editor, but now I'm the chief editor at Crone Girls Press. And we are an indie horror micropress, and we specialize in horror anthologies. We've been up and about for about 2 years now. We've got 4 full-length anthologies. This one will be our 5th, as well as a series of mini anthologies, which each consist of 3 novellas, and that's called Midnight Bites.
Cool, very cool. Carol?
Hi, I'm Carol Gyzander. I am one of the editors at Crone Girls Press. It's fun to say that. I am also a Stoker-nominated author of horror and science fiction stories and a editor of other anthologies as well.
Great, okay. Nicole?
Hi, everyone. I'm Nicole Givens-Kurtz. I'm an author of science fiction, fantasy, and horror. I'm also the owner of Mocha Memoirs Press, which is a small press right here in South Carolina that publishes science fiction, fantasy, and horror from marginalized voices.
Great. Michelle, or should I say CM?
Hi, yeah, you can call me Michelle, but my author name is CM Harris, and I've written a few novels. My latest one is She Never Left. It's my first thriller, but I've written across a few different genres, and I write a lot of short stories and a script. So I like to write a lot of different stuff.
Okay, cool. Marc.
Hi, I'm Marc Abbott. I am a horror writer out of Brooklyn, New York. I am one of the authors of Hell at the Way Station and Hell at Brooklyn T. And I've published numerous short fiction stories in multiple anthologies. And yeah, that's me.
Great, great. And the lone man in the company of some very becoming women. So anyway, and finally, Lee.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lee Murray, and I'm an award-winning writer and editor and poet from Aotearoa, New Zealand. I'm probably best known for Black Crane's Tales of Unquiet Women, which is an anthology of horror by Asian women, and also Tortured Willows, which is poetry by Asian women, and also Grotesque Monster Stories, which is a collection of short fiction. So very excited to be here. I have a poem in A Woman Unbecoming, so I feel very privileged to be here amongst all these writers.
Oh, I'm sure everybody feels privileged to be in the company of such wonderful authors, truly. Okay, Rachel, tell us about A Woman Unbecoming and its purpose and the inspiration behind it.
So the overall purpose is a charity anthology, and I haven't heard yet back from the 2 charities that we're going to be donating to, so I don't want to really mention them yet, but we will be using the proceeds to go to charities that will directly support access to abortion, as well as support the election of representatives who will fight for abortion access. So that is the overall purpose of the anthology. The secondary purpose, or maybe just like another purpose, for me anyway, is to have a direction for the emotions and the just something to be able to do to contribute to that. I know a lot of folks, I go, I vote, I write my representatives, but sometimes I feel like there's got to be more to do. And so after the decision was made, which I think we all kind of saw coming, I was like, I'm going to go crazy if I don't do something. And so that's where the anthology came from.
Okay, cool. Very cool. Was there a specific genesis? I seem to recall that it all came together when you got a certain story.
Yes. So right when the plague kicked off, we published Coppice and Break.
Mhm.
And in that anthology was C.M. Harris's story, A Woman Unbecoming. And when I was reading for that anthology, that story, it was just one of those that stuck out from the 1,500 submissions that I had been reading.
Wow.
And it had a very strong image, and it was a story that just unapologetically showed the voice and this, just, it was violent, and it was just like it's this cry of victory.
Mhm.
And there's horror stories that have that cry of victory, and some that attempt it, but that story, and I hope you're not blushing too much, Michelle, but it was just like, it was perfect. And then when the idea for this kicked off, I posted in our author group, I was like, this is probably a terrible idea because we're currently working on the sequel to Coppice and Break, and plus like 3 or 4 midnight bites in the queue, and I've got 1,000 things, and this would be the 1,001st thing. But I posted in the Facebook group, I'm like, I'm kind of thinking of doing a charity anthology, and the story that immediately came to mind was A Woman Unbecoming. I was like, that's the perfect vibe. That is what I want this anthology to be, because it's cathartic. And I think that we need some catharsis so that we can move on to action.
Sam, could you tell us a little bit about the story and a little, give us the jacket copy, if you will, for the story, the plot teaser, and will it be reprinted in the new anthology?
Oh, do you mean Coppice and Break 2?
No, I
I
mean,
don't.
Woman Unbecoming. Are they
Yes.
just taking your title, or are they taking the story?
They're taking the story. Yeah. First of all, thank you, Rachel. I like practically in tears from what you said. And I bet you could actually tell it better than me, but it is the story of Alice, a cyclist who is recovering from knee surgery, and she's out on a ride, just feeling the breeze through her hair and having a great time. And 2 men on bikes come up and they start harassing her for a very long time, and it gets horrific, but the tables do turn. And I don't want to say too much more than that, but it was very cathartic to write. And I don't know if you want me to go into how I came up with the idea, or
It's your call.
okay,
We're talking about this anthology the whole hour.
Can we guess how this came about?
I think one of the reasons why maybe it feels cathartic to actually read as well is, from a writer's standpoint, I don't shy away from using life experiences. So, I mean, that story is real close to everything that happened to me. And just the back end of it grows into something else. But yeah, what happened to me with these 2 guys was traumatic. It stuck with me. I could not sleep. I was the woman on that bed up at night. I just kept picturing it, and I forgot, oh yeah, I can write about this. And so I wrote about it, and it just evolved. And it was actually a much longer story, but it wasn't tight enough, and I tightened it up and submitted it. And Rachel picked it up. But yeah, the fact that it's cathartic for other people. And even after just writing it, I just stopped thinking about it and those guys. It was just like it had never happened. And when I stopped to think about what had happened to me, I had let it go. And the fact that it was in that book and then is, you know, helping in this book is like more than I could have ever like imagined. And honestly, worth the terror that I experienced in the first part. So yeah, I'm just thrilled to have it in there. So.
Great, great. Carol and Rachel, I presume that the other stories and poems, Lee, in the book are new and unique to this anthology. How did you select them? And how did you call for them? Did you put out a call for the writers you've worked with in the past? Did you have an open call? And then how did you select the stories that were submitted?
Well, it was a very exciting and fast turnaround project, as a matter of fact. This entire thing is going to be roughly 2 months from the time Rachel thought of it until the time it's published. And that's just a credit to her and the amount of coffee that she drinks. But also to the way that this topic appeals to people, because I ran into Rachel when she was up visiting in New York, and we were hanging out with one of my Horror Writer Association New York chapter groups, and Rachel talked to a couple people there saying, hey, I've got this thing going, and they immediately were in. And then what we found was that we didn't have to do an open call for this. I was in as well, you know, because what a great topic. But what we found was that this topic, the reversal of the Roe v. Wade by Supreme Court, yes, it's a US thing, but it has resonated all around the world, and the implications for so many people have been so significant that friends from other countries, you know, such as Lee, what we did, Rachel reached out to the people that she usually works with from Crone Girls Press, the Crone Girls authors, and I reached out to you know, friends here and there, and virtually every person that I spoke with said yes immediately. And one person was unfortunately not able to join us because of, you know, commitments, but, you know, supported the effort. But I am pleased to announce also that we even have an introduction by Gwendolyn Keist, who is doing this at the same time as her book is releasing, on the same day as ours. So you know, the folks who are all over and supporting it are terrific. Most of the stories are new. There were a few reprints that people were able to share. That's just a few of them, but upon reading them, they really spoke to the topic of women's rage and empowerment, and the combination of them all together is really powerful.
Just to make sure that nobody misses the release, when is this book going to be released?
Rachel, you say it.
August 23rd. Also, if I ever say I'm doing this again, please, Carol, tell me no.
All right, we'll make it 9 weeks instead of 8 next time.
Okay, all right, I'll be good.
9 weeks, sort of a reflection
Yes.
down. Instead, I suspect Rachel would prefer it to be 9 months, but we won't go there. Okay. Lee, tell us about the poem.
Oh, can I, before I tell you about the poem, can I just say how much Michelle's story resonated for me personally, and I think that's why Rachel and Carol have picked up on, you know, the title, and also, you know, featured it prominently in this anthology, because you know, as women, we're so often, you know, confronted by these things that might seem like microaggressions. I don't know how many times I've been on the footpath, and you are expected as a woman to step aside and move over for the bloke that's coming in the other direction. And, you know, and it is a terrifying thing to have no space on the footpath. There is no place for us, even on the footpath. And so and I'm a runner, I run trails, and so I totally understand this fear of being on your own out there with some blokes coming, and, you know, and also there's also the humor of this story as well, the black humor. I mean, you know, the whole terror of like Chris sports pants really comes out in the story. So So I just think it's a wonderful place to build the anthology, and super excited about what Rachel and Carol have said in terms of giving people a voice and an opportunity to kind of express their rage. And it's not just women, but as you said earlier, Jean Marie, it affects all of us. You know, when you start stripping away people's rights, we feel it deeply. And I made some notes because I made some notes when have had the privilege of reading the text ahead of its release date. Don't ask me how they did that in the 8 weeks that we had available. But I just want to just pull out some things from people's stories and poems. And Jennifer Nestojko, sorry if I'm annihilating her beautiful name there, but she writes in her story, people began to rise. They'd been given something to do to combat their fear, something to regain their power. And then we have Tara Laskowski, who wrote, and this is gorgeous, a collective force of sadness and terror and beauty. Up we came, our tentacles slicing through water. And then finally, in Carina Bissett's poem at the very end of the book, she writes, we rouse, spread our wings, fall from the sky. I just felt like when I was reading this anthology that the authors were telling you exactly what they were doing here, what the point of this anthology was, and what Carol and Rachel have brought together so beautifully and at this really important time. So that's me gushing. I do this every time. I can't help
That's
myself.
wonderful. You know, I want folks to know about these stories and poems and how vivid and wonderful they are, and that this is not like being hit over the head with some this is good for you lesson. This is fiction that blooms and explodes like the fireworks behind Carol there.
No, congratulations to them. They've put together something really, really special, and I do feel very privileged to be part of it. My own poem is called Status Transcript, beg your pardon, and it's a speculative poem about the future and what might happen if we just consider women's bodies as incubators, and it talks about a project of a ship called, or a colony called Humanity. And I think that's why I'm here, because I'm not American. So on the face of it, you know, Roe versus Wade being overturned doesn't affect me, but actually it does, because the United States is, you know, the big brother, the example sets the way, and you know, things that are pervasive and apparent in the United States affect all of us worldwide. So it's about humanity, and that's why I wrote the poem, and I'm very grateful to Carol and Rachel for picking it up.
Oh, great. Marc, what about you? Did you write poetry, or did you write a story? And does Jason play any role in it?
Jason does not play a role in it. It's actually a story called A Call to Action. And I have to begin by saying, when Carol approached me about this, it literally was, you know, Marc, we're doing an anthology to raise money for it. Yes. I was like, you don't even have to finish it, because I know exactly what this is for, and I'll be happy to. So originally I had given her a story that I had written in another for another anthology, and Carol read it, and she was like, it's not really, you know, we need it, it's got to have a lot more bite to it. And when she told me exactly how long I had to write this, I was like, okay, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna figure this out, because I know that I'm gonna have monsters in it. And really what happened was, I turned on, it was either Shudder or Prime, and I ended up watching one of the Hammer films about the witch trials. And the thing about me when I was growing up, what I always hated about those movies was how the religious zealots somehow convinced law-abiding people that women were this existential evil with no proof. You know, they would go after these women, they would seduce them, and then when they got what they wanted, and the woman would respond with like, well, what about, and it's like, you know what, no, witch, I got to get rid of her. And so I was watching this, and the wheels just started turning. And I originally had sat down, and basically it is the story of about a witch hunter, this brash, very handsome witch hunter who has successfully gone around and had many women burned at the stake. And he walks into a tavern, into a situation he is not prepared for. And all I will say is that the last witch he burns sent a message, and her friends came to help. And it's sort of like a vindication for me, because the way it originally ended, I was like, oh no, I really have to. I actually got mad writing it, because I was angry that the women didn't do what I really wanted them to do to this guy. And I was like, it's a charity. It's a charity book. I don't want to go too far off the deep end. But I mean, the thing is, I'm honored to be a part of this, because, you know, as a man, I've often run into others who believe that we don't care as much, you know, or because there are so many men who are behind the decision-making process of this, of stripping away somebody's rights, it's that we don't understand. I have a daughter, and anything could happen in the future. And, you know, she should have these rights. Everybody should have these rights. And for anyone to tell somebody that they cannot be who they want to be, or to make the decision to take care of themselves, this is a serious problem. And I think that that's really what I wanted to do with this story. I wanted to turn that completely on its head, and, you know, slap them all in the face with it.
Good.
If I could just add, Marc's passion for this project is what so many people have reflected to us. The folks that wrote these stories in such a hurry for us. Marc is also in the middle of writing his thesis for his master's, you know, and I don't have time, but I have to do this. And the dedication that he showed us for getting this out, it was just amazing. And all the other folks that wrote new stories for us. I mean, our thanks to everyone.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and I also wanted to pick up on something that Marc said regarding, you know, male authors, female authors, or I should say male and female identifying authors. Carol and I were talking about this as I was driving up from North Carolina today. And one of the things we wanted to be very clear on is that it's not a gender identity issue. This is a systems issue. Like, patriarchy is a system that people are complicit with, no matter which side of the gender spectrum they happen to fall on. So for us, we're not, you know, this is not an anthology against men. This is an anthology that's working to dismantle a system. And so that's why with this anthology, with all of the anthologies we do, we're looking to include different voices so we can have those different perspectives and understandings of how to approach the issue, but in like a fun horror way.
Fun and horror seem a bit like, you know, those two don't necessarily go together, but I will take your word for it. Anyway, Rachel, what was your story about?
So
let me put you on the hot seat. Like I said, I only kill people who are bigger than me.
Yes. So it is called A Crucible Feast. And the inspiration for it was the sort of cult of personality that certain public figures tend to either cultivate or try to cultivate. and the pandering that they do, and well, I mean, basically everything that they do to get what they want and to pursue that power. And so in the story, it's told from the perspective of a woman who is a head of personal security for a candidate who's about to announce their presidential aspirations. And then hot sauce. There's some mango apricot hot sauce that comes out at the end. And so that is what I will say about that.
Well, that sounds like fun. Mango, pepper hot sauce. That has real possibilities. I will say that. Nicole, what about you? What did you choose to write on?
So my story is called Lipstick Smile, and it's not as serious as some of the other stories. It's not humorous, but it is about body autonomy in the sense that it goes kind of hand in hand with what Rachel was saying about patriarchy and this idea that women have to smile and that women need to wear lipstick and women need to wear makeup to be beautiful. And so my character is kind of talked into going to a cosmetic desk at a department store a mall department store to buy a new lipstick, and the greediness that comes with that. It also has some things along the lines of European beauty standards. Traditionally, African-American women were mocked for our lips and the size of our lips and the shapes of our lips until the Kardashians made it popular to have fuller lips, even though Black women have always had fuller lips. And so there's a lot of little conversation kind of, and I forgot the word, conversation kind of ticks in the story around being female, what it means to be female, what people tell you it means to be female, right? And not accepting who women as we come, or people who identify as women as we are. And there's a power in that, in being able to say, no, this is me all day, every day, right?
Yeah.
This is who I am, and that not being taken away from us. So I wanted to support this anthology because in many instances, I can't have children. So my sons are all adopted. But the process for getting to the point where I realized that I couldn't have children was my personal journey, but it required healthcare for that. And I don't think that should be denied anyone. It's my body, right? And it's my right to do with my body as I will. It's every individual's right. And I think Marc talked about that a lot earlier. It's not just about being anywhere on that spectrum of being wherever on the binary spectrum you fall in terms of gender. You should be able to get the healthcare you need. And abortion is healthcare. Yes. And I don't think that someone should tell me what I can do with my body. It just kind of changes, right? And so it's the same. It's a small thing. You should wear lipstick. You should smile. You should wear makeup.
You should get off the bike path.
Right. It's a small thing.
Yeah.
But it's in the same vein, right? And it always starts small. It starts small with little girls. Oh, aren't you pretty? Instead of, hey, aren't you smart? Or aren't you clever? Or aren't you brilliant? It's, hey, aren't you cute? Right? And it's just little things like that. I have boys, but me and my boys would talk about that too, about, female autonomy, body autonomy, and they want to do with their bodies what they want to do too. And so there's a standard for boys also, right? That they can't do this and they can't wear that. And so just those pieces show up in Lipstick Smiles. It's not nearly as powerful as some of the other stories, but I do think it's an important one. I think it's an important one.
Well, these are all important on every level, and because it is, as you say, the little things and the expectations that we all, however we identify, have to live to those expectations. And the perversions that go on, not perversions in the moral sense, but the
Right.
perversions of our own character that go on when we are forced to operate in an inherently hostile system. And
You wouldn't think a department store would be, but it becomes hostile quick.
yeah,
It's-
almost anything can become a hostile system.
And
Yeah.
it's subversive. So it's a subversive story. That was the word I was looking for earlier.
Good.
Rachel.
I'm good
Yes,
with
it
subversive.
is.
It's just-
And that's why I love it. And it was so funny because I'd actually read that story in a previous call, and I forget which project I was reading it for, but it wasn't quite there, but it stuck in my head, right? It was like one of those stories I'm like, I really like this, but I don't know what to do with it. And then when we started to do this, I was like, oh, I need that. I need that because that's one of the puzzle pieces for this anthology. Because not every story can be the same, otherwise it wouldn't be an anthology, or at least not an interesting one. But if we're going to look at a system, we need all of the parts of the system.
Mhm.
And so I was like, oh, this story. So I was like, Nicole, can I have it, please? I think I said please. I'm pretty sure I didn't just say, gimme.
I hope you said please. Anyway, Carol, we haven't talked about your story yet.
My story is called The Tapping, and it's sort of a ghost story, a haunted story, which is amusing because I was just a co-editor with Jim Chambers for Even in the Grave, which is a book of ghost stories, and I didn't have a story in it, so now I have a ghost story, which is very fun. But there's a couple that arrives at her great aunt's house, and the guy is a jerk, and he treats her badly, and he learns that was a bad idea. Let's just say that. Yeah. Great Aunt Gertrude and the family are not really keen on this.
Yeah, I had my grandmother and some of my great aunts. I would not want to meet them at ghosts. And one day in a bar, I will tell you a funny story about the 1-year anniversary of my grandmother's death.
Oh.
And
Okay, I can't wait for the next convention. Yeah.
but anyway, so that is very cool. Carol and Rachel, could you give us, the quick and dirty on some of the other stories that are in there?
Yes. So it was really funny because a lot of, like for instance, Lee mentioned Carina Bissett's End of Days poem. And that was one of the ones that I got through a friend of mine, DeAnna Knippling, who we also have a story by her. And she was like, I emailed this story and I don't think I've ever had it rejected so fast. And I was like, oh, please give it to me because it'll be perfect. And so, yeah, so we have, so DeAnna's story is called You Wouldn't Want to See Me Smile. And I think she once again wins the award for longest title in a Crone Girls anthology. And it's about a woman who is in a very traditionally Christian relationship and lives a very kind of like a quiet life. And she just has this beautiful description of being the sort of person that other people talk over. And her sister-in-law goes through a very bad miscarriage, which eventually ends up being a fatal miscarriage. And she is empowered through, I don't want to give too much away, but she becomes empowered and breaks out of this former shell. And it's a story that it's quiet, but it's also like once you read it, you're like, whoa. And then we have Bridgett Nelson's story, A Monster's Child, which is just like, wow. I was reading that, I'm like, oh my, oh goodness. Oh.
I had to put, by the time I got to that story, I had to put the book down for a little while. Yeah.
It's very intense. It is very intense.
Do not read it during dinner.
No.
Okay.
And Michael G. Williams, he wrote a story that I read, the first time I read it, I'm like, oh gosh, this story is so good. And then I read it again, I'm like, oh gosh, wow, okay, that's what's going on. So like, it had that level. I was like, oh, now I get it. And it's cosmic horror. It's a gentleman who's returning back to the family farm, which at first is just like, it seems a little culty, like a little sister wifey. But then you start to see more of what's going on, and you're like, oh my goodness. And I love stories like that. Like Marc's story, when Carol sent it to me, I was like reading it. I'm like, oh, okay, I gotta see. I didn't see where that was going. I just love stories that do that, that have that unexpected, not a twist. You know, like I love twists though, don't get me wrong, but just they present you this unique perspective, this different way of looking at something that you didn't think that you were going to get going into the story. I love that.
Great. Oh, that's wonderful.
We have a number of poems in as well. You know, Rachel's mentioned a few, but we have one by Teel James Glenn called Courted, which is very on point, and Lee's as well. And we have one by Linda Addison, as we mentioned, which is just stunning, and a number of other ones. And it's a fabulous mixture to be able to tell the same kind of idea through both prose and poetry is really, I think, exciting and valuable and wonderful. We also have a story from Stephen Van Patten called Patron Saint, which is very intense, and the power of the women at the end. There's a couple who have tried to do the right thing for their kid, but the mom got a little carried away with maybe a little exploitation of her child, and it doesn't go over well, let's just say.
Well, one likes poetic justice, and when the universe delivers justice, especially in a story, it can be very uncomfortable when it happens in real life, but it's very cathartic in a story. And I'm hearing a lot of catharsis, which is wonderful. Beyond catharsis, which I think that in this situation is something we all hope for, and when in our writing and in folks reading, what is the one thing that each of you wants your readers to take away from your story and from the anthology? I'll start with you, Nicole.
So I would like for them to take from my story that this sense of identity and body autonomy, right? Being a right for all human beings, and because capitalism can be greedy, and so can patriarchy. It can eat you up and spit you out if you are not willing to stand your ground and be your authentic self. So that's one lesson. And then in terms of the anthology, all of these stories and poems not are a call to action. It's time, right? It's time to do more than if you're sitting on the sidelines. Get involved. It's the action piece, right? Here's your invitation to A Woman Unbecoming. Like, get out there and get started. And it doesn't have to be a march. Like, some people are really introverted, and there are many, many, many ways that you can contribute and support like this women and human rights, right? And basic healthcare for human rights and body autonomy without necessarily being at a million woman march. Do you know what I mean? There are ways that you can still be involved and be an active participant in doing what's right and undoing this wrong. And I think the anthology is a call for that.
Good. Carol, what about your story and what you hope folks to take from it?
Well, my story is very much a woman who is put down by her husband, starts to change a little bit. And as Nicole says, that and the entire anthology is an awakening of the fact that women have power, people have rights. And once we go through the angst and the horror and some of the violence in this anthology, it frees up our energy for something. And I think we need to recognize that it's important to take that energy and put it in a positive direction and go out and support the folks who need our support.
Supporting people's rights, yes.
Yeah.
Marc, what's the takeaway you want from your story and from the anthology?
Well, the takeaway is when the call is made, come.
Mm.
When that friend or the person that even if you don't know them, they're calling for help, go and help them the best
Mhm.
way that you can.
Mhm.
For the book, I do think, again, it's a wake-up call.
Mhm.
I think we as authors have we can do some very powerful things with ink and a piece of paper.
Mhm.
And I think with this, if people were on the fence before,
Right.
seeing how we feel, how we've expressed ourselves, and
Right.
that what we're willing to do and how far we're willing to go to make sure that the right changes are made.
Mhm.
Hopefully they get inspired by it. Hopefully some of these stories will anger people enough who weren't angry enough.
Mhm.
Maybe there's a story or poem in there that will inspire somebody to finally say, you know what, this is what I needed to get up off the couch
Mhm.
and get out there and do what I need to do. But I do hope that this book motivates people to fight for change and understand that it's not just for other people. We're all included in this.
Right.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Rachel, what do you want folks to take away from your story and from the anthology as a whole?
Well, from my story, I would like them to know that mango apricot hot sauce is delicious and goes very well on pork. From the anthology in particular, I know that for me, when the decision was announced,
Mhm.
I felt so upset, not just because of the decision, because I looked back at like everything I had done in the previous 5 or 6 years, and I thought to myself, well, it wasn't enough. You know, I should have been more vocal in my support of Hillary Clinton's candidate, and I wasn't. I should have done more to volunteer for campaigns. I should have done more. And so being upset was like this whole mixture of emotions of being angry and feeling guilty. I hope that when people read this, it gives them the idea that, yeah, like Marc said, you're not alone, that you're part of a community and we are feeling the same way, and we are giving you permission to feel all of these complicated emotions. And once you get all that out, then there's more to do. Midterms are coming up. That's one of the reasons why I was like, hey, we got to get this out. Midterms are coming up. There's a reading list that that we're including in the book that Carol got from a webinar on reproductive rights. And so there's a whole list of articles and information that people can read to get a little bit more education, maybe figure out, you know, hey, what can I do? Like Nicole said, like, it doesn't have to be big stuff. Incremental change is, if that's what we could get, then let's go for it. Whether it's voting for a local school board member, or voting for a Senate candidate, or writing a letter to the newspaper, or accepting some confrontation on your social media space to explain that you're setting a boundary of, no, I support women's autonomy, I support bodily autonomy for everyone. And so, yeah, so I realize that's kind of a lot to expect from one little anthology, but I feel like this is what we're doing to try and get there.
Dream big.
Yes.
Lee, what do you hope people take away from your poem and from the anthology as a whole?
Well, I guess it's really been said, but the last line of my poem is await your response. So, you know, I'm sitting here in the sidelines, you know, on the other side of the world, looking to see what will happen in the United States and beyond. And, you know, what is our response to this change, or to this, you know, overturning? And I think I think that's what we're all saying, you know, we need to act, and how are we going to act, and what are we going to do? What is our response to this? And so I think that kind of sums it up. As far as the anthology goes, and I agree with what everyone else has said in terms of it's a call to action, but also I think this is an incredibly rich anthology, and the breadth of the stories and poems here, you know, just make you think differently and you know, see things differently. And I think perhaps will provoke people to act differently, because some of the solutions are here. You know, we've got stories here. There's fairy tales, you know, I think Jeff Wood wrote this wonderful retelling of Rumpelstiltskin, and the way that we expect women to recreate gold, you know, you know, it's just to, and that expectation and that exploitation. And then you have Christina, let me just check her name, Nordlander, who wrote this absolutely amazing tale of sort of medical exploitation of women's bodies for research, and just the breadth of what we're seeing. You've got Carol with a generational tale of the occult. You've got witch hunting from Marc, and I think Marc's not the only one who looked at that whole idea of women being persecuted as witches. Nicole with her wonderful lipstick story, you know, which is microaggressions, and that pursuit of beauty, and that demand that we must always, you know, we can't be our authentic selves. And and Rachel's wonderful sensory story about, you know, food, and she's layered inside this very political, gritty tale of, you know, the Secret Service and looking at, you know, and bodyguards, which I think is a lovely metaphor, that whole notion of bodyguards, to put in, so that not only is this a call to action, but it's also a very entertaining anthology, which really looks at it from so many different angles and ways of writing, and from both emerging authors and some very established. I mean, you've got Linda Addison, you've got Jeff Strand in here, so you've got some really, you know, incredibly talented writers. So I would say also, you know, buy the book, because it is entertaining and it is, you know, reflective. And I think that is also the importance of writing. You know, it's to entertain and to make people think in a different way. So let's think differently and also act differently.
Okay. And finally, CM, and I saved you for last. It was a deliberate thing so that you could have the final word on the anthology before we close out. What is the thing you want people to take from your story, from your recasting of your life? You know, you're giving us your life on that story, and from the anthology that you inspired.
I think when you strip away the horror in the story and the sci-fi, this character actually had a lot of power on her own to deal with these guys. And the horror was entertaining. And I think that that's true with a lot of these stories. And so when you're looking at the anthology overall, the keys are there. The horror and the humor, it's all very entertaining, but marginalized people have a voice. It doesn't always have to be through art, but we have a voice.
That's good. That's good. Okay, we are at last coming up to the end of our time together. So I'm going to go around the virtual room one last time and ask you to, you know, let folks know about your most recent publication, Beyond A Woman Unbecoming, and where they can find you on the web. And CM, we'll start with you.
You can find me at authorcmharris.com. My latest book is She Never Left. It's a thriller, and I'm actually working on the follow-up to She Never Left, and it's got this story as a chapter within it, and that's going to be called The Sum of Our Parts. So.
Okay, great. Nicole, what's your latest release, and where can folks find you on the web?
So I have a story.
Counts too.
Okay. So my latest story is in Hybrid, Misfit Monsters and Other Phenomena. It's called As Dark Than Night. And I have another story that just came out from Bain in No Game for Nights. My story is in this one. It's a sci-fi noir, which is pretty much a lot of what I write when I'm not writing horror. You can find me at NicoleGivensKurtz.com or at MochaMemoirsPress.com.
Great. And Marc?
Well, my latest story, The Bells, is in the newly published Even in the Grave anthology that was edited by Carol and James Chambers. You can find me, my website is whoismarklabbott.com.
Okay, great. Lee?
Latest story. Oh, quite a few
Poems are
stories.
good,
Yeah, quite a few
anthologies.
stories. A poem and hybrid misfits, which Nicole just lifted. I have a story coming out in Grimdark. Grimdark's A King Must Fall. I've got something just came out in IFWG's Dracula Unfanged. I've got a story in, oh no, you can't see it. A story in Dark Deeds Down Under. So quite a few stories coming out. What I've been recently working on is a feature film and body horror and, you know, yeah. So that's been really fun. So you can find me on leemurray.info.
Okay, great. Carol, what about you? Your most recent release, Beyond, A Woman Unbecoming, and where folks can find you on the web.
Thank you. We've already mentioned Even in the Grave. I also have a story in Weird House Press magazine, our first issue, which is a cryptid story of mine, which has just come out recently, and I can be found on the web at carolgyzander.com.
Great. And finally, Rachel, your most recent stories, other than the ones in A Woman Unbecoming, and where folks can find you on the web.
So the previous Crone Girls publication was the latest in the Midnight Fights series, and it is a mini anthology called Objectified. It has stories from Jennifer Nestojko and Crystal Orange, who also have a story and a poem respectively in A Woman Unbecoming, as well as a story from Shannon Scott, and each of these have to do with cursed objects. And it's, until A Woman Unbecoming, I told people it's the most feminist anthology we've published yet, but literally everything we publish is pretty feminist. So you can find us on the web at cronegirlspress.com. And then all of our socials are at Crone Girls Press. So Insta, Twitter, and now TikTok, because our PA, Ravyn Crescent, who also has a story in there called The Gift, she is helping us move into, I guess, the 21st century of TikTok, and doing quite well at it. So
great.
You can find us there.
Do you have a personal website, or is everything through Crone Girls?
I do. It's called Infamous Scribbler, so infamous-scribbler. And then because I wised up and took some advice, my Twitter and Insta are at Rachel A. Brune.
Great. Okay, great. Well, thank you all, and I hope you sell lots and lots of books and motivate a lot of people to productive action. That's my hope for A Woman Unbecoming and for all of us in the United States and the world, because there's a lot of productive action that needs to be taken on so many issues. But that's a conversation for a different night. For now, I will say thank you from everyone here at ConTinual, the convention that's always here when you want to have interesting conversations.